Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pizzapia, and today it's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for the rankings. That's right, playoff time, baby. Let's go. And we brought back a good friend of ours from Sports Illustrated. Bill Enright is back yet again to help us parse through all these ranks, get you the guys in your lineup you need to, and the guys you can't avoid putting in your lineup, what you need to do to get some spots maybe in the wide receiver 3, in the flex, maybe RB2. It might have to make up for some tenuous matchups. Before we get going, though, a happy birthday to our good pal, Pat Fitzmaurice. I want you to flood the YouTube comments with birthday wishes for Patty Fitz. Fitz, what's it like turning 29?
Oh, it's my fourth straight year of 29, Joe. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. But it's like, this was definitely a better time to have a birthday when I was a kid. And it was the nice, tied me over with a present of some sort before Christmas when I was dying to get it, all that stuff under the tree. Now it's like, I've got fantasy playoffs on my mind. This birthday thing is just kind of an obstacle. Got to get past this. At least you're not too close
to Christmas where you got the slash present. That's the worst. Any parent who gives the slash present, come on. That is not fair. It's a terrible thing. So if you're a real parent or friend, you don't buy slash presents. You get them a birthday present and a Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever present. Come on, that's what we got to do. We got presents for you, including the inside of these two gentlemen. So let's get after it. Let's start with the running backs here, and let's start with David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears. Now, hopefully getting Justin Fields back. He was ill today, did not practice. We'll keep an eye on that. He's day-to-day, but then again, aren't we all? 15 points against Green Bay, 13 against the Jets. So he's still putting up some decent fantasy points. Pat, you've got him at RB19. Bill's got him at 28. ECR actually a little bit closer to Bill at 26. So I know this game is at home for them. What are your thoughts here taking on the Eagles team that ranks kind of in the middle of the pack defensively against running backs?
Well, in the 3 games since Bears backup running back Khalil Herbert's got hurt, Montgomery is averaging 19.3 opportunities per game, meaning carries plus targets, and 100.3 yards from scrimmage per game. So from week 11 to week 13, he was the RB6 in half-point PPR scoring. And the Eagles really, I think people look at them as being some sort of daunting matchup, but they really aren't for running backs. Their pass defense is fantastic, but if anything, that incentivizes opponents to run against the Eagles. And they're just kind of, I think, middle of the pack in rushing yards against, running back receptions against. So not a bad matchup for Montgomery at all here, and he's been productive ever since the Herbert injury.
Now, Bill, you and the consensus are a little less passionate about David Montgomery this week. A pretty good variance between you guys and Pat. That being said, game script, I imagine, would portend to the Eagles being up again, and that's, possibly something that could also be a bad situation for David Montgomery. How do you see that? Is that a game script built into your ranking? Is that why he's a little bit lower in your group?
Yeah, the Bears are 9-point underdogs in this one, and the over-under is 48.5. So there should be some scoring, but just the fact that they're such big underdogs, I do expect the Bears to be into passing situation a little bit earlier than maybe they're accustomed to, because they do want to run the football. But Pat mentioned the Eagles, I think, saying a lot of people expect them to be this daunting matchup. I'm one of those people. I'm afraid of running backs going against the Philadelphia Eagles based on what I saw Derrick Henry do, 6.8 or 5.8 points, and Saquon Barkley, 6 points the last 2 weeks for going up against Philadelphia. They brought in Linval Joseph. They brought in the Ndamukong Suh. They have the rookie Jordan Davis back. I think Howie Roseman did an excellent job. The Washington Commanders exposed the Eagles of having a weakness, and Roseman went out and signed two defensive tackles. Veterans brought him, plugged in those running gaps, and we saw the result of that the last 2 weeks against the Titans and the Giants. So I'm a little wary of Montgomery this week.
If Jordan Davis is healthy, that's a huge addition to that front as well. Next guy on the list is D'Onta Foreman. Now, last week, he had 22 touches. That sounds great, except he only had 8 half PPR points. I don't know how that exactly happens, but it did. So it was a little frustrating there. Chuba Hubbard got some work as well. So the yardage total was there, but not a whole lot of extras, as we like to call them. Pat, you've got him as RB24 this week in your rankings. Obviously, still very startable as a low-end RB2. Bill, meanwhile, has him at RB31, much closer to, I would say, that flex conversation. ECR in between you guys at 27. So, Pat, let's talk about this matchup here. Carolina taking on Pittsburgh. Now, you can throw the ball pretty well on Pittsburgh, running it a little bit different of a story. it's very hard to use a lot of data we have on Carolina because the quarterbacks have changed so frequently, really don't know what the identity of this offense is. But to the best of your ability, what do you think the identity of the Carolina Panthers is now with Sam Darnold these last few weeks? And is it something we can invest in with D'Onta Foreman?
The identity is to mask Sam Darnold, Joe. So yes, I mean, it's an identity that favors the running backs here. And we saw that last week with the Panthers giving their running backs 39 total carries. And it wasn't just Foreman. It was also Chuba Hubbard and Raheem Blackshear. So since week 7, Foreman has averaged 19.3 carries and 85.7 rushing yards a game. We know he doesn't give you anything in the passing game. So really like low end RB2 is pretty much the upside here. But they are going to run the ball and try to, mask their quarterback deficiencies as best they can. That's kind of been the MO here for them the last few weeks. And, the Steelers, they were really easy to run on last year. They've kind of fixed some of their problems with run defense this year. They're still a neutral matchup. I wouldn't say really a difficult matchup for running backs. But what I like here is that the Panthers are actually favored in this game. So you figure the game script is probably going to remain run friendly. And they're going to be able to do that and do their thing and try to minimize the impact that Sam Darnold has on this offense. I guess I shouldn't say that. Darnold hasn't been terrible since coming back. He's been
terrible, but well, still 3 words you don't hear very often. Panthers are favored. Those are 3 words we don't hear all that often together. D'Onta Foreman's game log, Bill, when you look at it, it's a good game against Tampa, then a great game against Atlanta. The only other great game was also against Atlanta. The rest has been kind of slogging, and I know some injuries in between and all of that. So what's your expectations here? It's week 1 of the playoffs, basically. This is where we're at round 1. Do you think that Foreman is somebody you should feel good about flexing? Because that's basically where you have him. Or are you concerned a little bit, too, of this dual backfield kind of situation eating itself?
I think given his volume, you have to be confident using him as your flex. 31, 24, 21 carries through the last 4 games. Pat said it. He's not involved in the passing game at all, and that is what kind of caps his upside. I think he has 5 catches all season. His snap percentage went down. Like when Blackshear and Hubbard were out, Foreman was at like a 70% snap share. It went down to 47% this past week, and Hubbard was more efficient. They got the same amount of carries last week, and Hubbard outpaced what Foreman, or excuse me, they had the same amount of yards last week. Hubbard had significantly less carries for the same amount of yards. So the efficiency scares me a little bit. And Hubbard and Blackshear both scored touchdowns. Foreman hasn't scored in 3 games. So that part is a little concerning. But given his volume, they're still giving him the ball. And Pat said it too. I think it is to kind of mask what Sam Darnold does. So I think as a flex, totally fine with it.
All right, one more guy that Pat is higher on than Bill. Let's talk about this one here. It's Cordarrelle Patterson. Now, CP coming off a bye week here, also has a new quarterback in Desmond Ridder. Pat, you've got him ranked as RB31. Bill has him at 39. The ECR had him at 37 yesterday. Today, that's moved now to 32. So a little bit of movement forward here on Patterson. I'm not exactly sure why, but let's talk about this. The unknown factor here. We are in the playoffs. You want to get your best lineup in, but obviously we don't know what this offense is with Desmond Ridder under center. So how confident are you in what Patterson can offer both on the rushing side and on the receiving end?
I'm confident that the Falcons are going to continue to tilt run heavy. Another instance, I think, where they're going to want to protect Ridder and, make this as easy on him as possible. So a lot of running, a lot of play action. But we do know that there are going to be multiple backs involved. Tyler Algier has continued to have a pretty big role, and Caleb Huntley works in now and again. And we have seen Patterson go through a touchdown drought. After scoring 5 touchdowns in his first 5 games, he's gone scoreless in his last 4. So his weekly ECR has been sort of starting to trend downward, and maybe people are feeling a little less confident in him. I guess the one thing that gives me confidence is the, idea that they are going to want to run to protect Ridder and make things easier for him. And maybe the other one, I don't know if the Saints should be considered a plus matchup, but we did see Patterson in the season opener run for 120 yards and a touchdown against them.
Mm-hmm.
And last season against the Saints, there was a game where he had 126 receiving yards. So I don't know. Maybe there's something about the Saints that gets Patterson revved up. But
Patterson, by the way, Bill had 2 touchdowns in his returning game after being out for several weeks. Hasn't had a touchdown since. I always say in the playoffs, you're looking for guys who have touchdown equity. That's the difference maker for me. I don't care if it's a standard league, PPR. I don't care. You want the guys to bring touchdown equity. And my concern is how much he brings to the table this week. Pat makes a great point, though. He's had some smash games against New Orleans. So what's your temperature on Cordarrelle this week?
I'm worried about those touchdowns, too. The Saints only allowed 1 touchdown to opposing running backs since week 9. Patterson's still very efficient with the football, averaging over like 5 yards per carry in his last 3 games. Problem is, he's only had 11 rushing attempts. And that kind of volume, even though the efficiency there, that kind of volume just doesn't bode well for big-time fantasy points. When you factor in, I'm not expecting a lot of touchdowns. The Saints don't give up a lot of touchdowns, and Patterson hasn't really found the end zone. I don't want to invest in my fantasy playoffs with a team starting a rookie quarterback for the first time. I am worried about that. I know Mariota's out now because he had knee surgery, but they made this announcement way before it was decided that Mariota would miss the rest of the season. I don't want to roll the dice with a new signal caller. I consider quarterback the most important position in any sport. I don't want any part of the Falcons playmakers this weekend. If you have to use Patterson, he is outside of my top 36 for running back. So a little bit outside of that flex territory. I understand people are in a position they have to use him. Good luck, but I'm not expecting a lot from him this week.
I'm kind of where you are. If you have to, I get it. Sometimes we just don't have the options.
Yeah.
But if you can avoid it, you might want to try, because I hate the unknown in the playoffs. Like, I want the things, even if it's something mediocre, at least I know what it is. I can't take zeros. That's my problem right there. But a lot of good information on both sides on that one player. Speaking of investments, by the way, before we get to the guys that Bill likes more than Pat, the Daily Juice. Listen, if you're wagering, you need to be listening to this show. Again, you can watch it on the YouTube channel too. Fantasy Pros. Again, we have the Betting Pros channel. Don't forget, youtube.com/Betting Pros. Subscribe to that. You can also get the Daily Juice every single day. Sean Green is out there giving you content on basketball, on football, college basketball, college football. He's doing everything. I don't know how he does it. I don't know when he sleeps. He's amazing. Go check it out. bettingpros.com/Daily Juice. You can get it wherever you get your pods, but don't make any wagering moves without checking him out. He's there every single day for you. That's stunning. Bill, let's talk about Ezekiel Elliott. Let's talk about him, because he just keeps falling in the end zone. He has had a touchdown every game since week 6, sometimes 2. He has had at least 15 points in every single game since week 6. I know it's not always pretty, but it's productive. And you've got him as RB11. ECR's got an RB12. Pat, however, is not feeling it. He is not there yet. We have to convince him. And I can't believe I am here stomping for Ezekiel Elliott. That's how weird 2022 has gotten on me. But let's talk about it here, because we talk about looking for touchdowns in the playoffs. Ezekiel Elliott seems to be a walking touchdown lately. Decent matchup here this week as well against Jacksonville. So give us your thoughts on Zeke and why he's an RB1 this week for you.
5 touchdowns in 4 games. He's finished as RB15 or better in 4 straight games. You look at what Dallas has done on offense over their last 3. They rank 3rd in the NFL with 172 yards on the ground, 48% run percentage versus pass, so very balanced attack. I think the Cowboys are certainly trending up, gearing up for the playoffs, and Zeke looks healthy. There were a couple games where Tony Pollard looked absolutely incredible, and Zeke was out with that knee injury. But the last few weeks, I really think Elliott is past that injury. He looks fresh, and a lot of it is because they're giving the ball more to Tony Pollard, so it's not like that 30 carries a game like we've seen at peak Zeke. But I'll certainly take him as a low-end running back 1, high-end RB2 this week, because you said it, Joe. He has been falling into the end zone. 5 touchdowns in 4 games. You can't pass up that kind of value when someone's scoring that much.
Yeah, nice 3-week vacation for Zeke in the middle of the season. I'd like to get that, Pat. Maybe I can put in for it. I'll put in with Friedman, see what he says. My guess is no. But look at also what he's done, too, in terms of RB finish. Since week 6, RB11, RB10, then the 3-week vacation, RB8, RB13, 8, and 12. That's a pretty good run here. Why so glum on Zeke?
Well, the funny thing about Zeke, you guys, is that he has had pretty much for yardage and usage, he has been the same guy the entire season. It's like every week, 15 carries, 63 yards, very little usage in the passing game. He's got 14 catches on the year for 73 yards. So like there's not a lot to get that excited about there. I guess it's nice that he gets the 15 touches every week. But the touchdowns, one in his first 5 games, I believe, and now he is just on a rampage with 8 in his last 6. So how much do you want to bet on the touchdown equity that you talked about being so important, Joe? Like, I tend to be a little skeptical of the guys whose fantasy production is so heavily touchdown based. And I think that's kind of the case with Zeke, and why I just can't get there as far as having him as an RB1. I mean, I think you're playing him under most circumstances, probably, unless it's a real shallow, a 10-team league, and, you've got 4 top 20 running back options. Maybe he gets squeezed out of the picture a little bit. But, yeah, hard to argue with what the Dallas offense has been doing and, the way he's been just punching in touchdowns. But, I've still got Tony Pollard ranked higher this week.
Well, that's fair. Goodness knows how much I like Tony Pollard. That's for sure. Speaking of touchdown dependent, let's talk Jamaal Williams, right? Doesn't get more than that. 14 touchdowns in 13 games. That's what he does. That's what he does. He is a touchdown machine, Jamaal Williams. He is RB20 in Bill's rankings this week. ECR is with 21, right where Bill is. And then Pat's at 26. Now, I've noticed overnight the ECR has moved a little bit to RB24, still in the same general range here. They're taking on the Jets this week. Jets defense has been pretty stout. We got to give them a lot of credit here. But Bill, once again, we're talking about touchdown equity. I mean, if you look it up in the dictionary this year, it's Jamaal Williams, but it is a muddy backfield. Swift is there. Jackson's getting touches. It seems like a difficult thing. Plus, Jared Goff, we always talk about it. He's an indoor cat, not an outdoor cat. He goes outside. All of a sudden, that offense typically isn't as prolific. So what do you make of Jamaal Williams' fantasy value in Week 15?
Yeah, you brought up Goff. He certainly has struggled on the road this year. I do think they lean on the run a little bit more because of that. Jets defense, they've been playing great. Quinnen Williams might not play. That's a big loss for their interior defensive front if Williams is not going to be able to play this weekend against the Lions. And listen, I know touchdowns are hard to predict, but when it comes to Jamaal Williams, baby, this guy he has a magnet for that goal line. It's incredible to watch him this year. Take away his touchdowns, and he's probably outside the top 65. But the fact that he is scoring and is scoring multiple times a game, I find it hard not to rank him inside my top 20. 20, I think I have him at 20 this week or 21. That's low for me. Usually I have him in my top 15. But because of the matchup with the Jets, I downgraded him a little bit. But the guy's he's scoring at an incredible rate, and it's really hard not to get some of that action into your lineup.
Well, he's absolutely in the flex conversation. I guess the point is, Pat, who are the kind of guys that you're starting over Jamaal Williams this week? Because I can understand looking for guys who might have more touches. I mean, if you look in the rankings right now, Zonovan Knight is ahead of him, right, in that same game, which I can understand that. He's going to touch the football more. But is that what you need? You got to make sure you're just locking in a real, true volume guy who also has touchdown equity, because if you can't, why not just roll the dice with Jamaal Williams, who just keeps finding the end zone?
Yeah, guys like Knight, guys who have a little bit better touch outlook. And it's not that Jamaal Williams' touch outlook has been terrible, but he's not been very effective lately. Like over his last 6 games, he is averaging 3.35 yards per carry. And over his last 6 games, he has 0 catches. 0 catches, 1 target, 0 catches. So it's basically all about the touchdown value here. And he's going up against a Jets defense that has allowed 7 touchdown runs all season. So I know that the Quinnen Williams injury is big, although I thought it seemed like it was going to be a multi-week injury at the time, but now I thought they said there's a chance he could possibly play this week, which would be kind of miraculous. I'll feel better about him if Quinnen Williams is out, because that guy's a wrecking ball. But I'm a little worried that he has not been all that effective as a runner lately. And maybe that's why DeAndre Swift got a little more run 2 weeks ago. But then we saw, everyone who was ready to get back on the Swift bandwagon, he was very disappointing last week. So it's a murky backfield. And if you start Jamaal, you're hoping for a touchdown, because if you don't get it, I mean, I don't think you've got 120-yard rushing upside here against the Jets.
No, you don't. You definitely don't have that. And the Williams injury certainly would be a huge one too. Quentin Williams, that is. Let's get to the last guy on Bill's list. It's higher than Pat. It's Brian Robinson. The last time we saw Brian Robinson, it was a 12-point half PPR performance against the New York Giants. This time we're getting the Giants again, but in his own field, a little bit of extra rest here. Does that do the rookie good here, Bill Enright? Because you've got him at 21. ECR's at 28. Pat's at 33, so even lower. Now, I don't know if Pat's made an adjustment to that since, but what are your thoughts on Brian Robinson this week around? Because last time we saw him, it wasn't so much Antonio Gibson we were worried about. Does that enter into your concern at all in week 15?
No, not necessarily, only because the Giants defense, they're really banged up. I don't think Leonard Williams is going to play. Their rookie linebacker, Michael McFadden's supposed to be out. They have just been getting run over by opposing running backs. 92 yards to Ezekiel Elliott. Brian Robinson just 2 weeks ago had 96, as you mentioned. 144 yards to Miles Sanders last week. I think the Giants are a little bit deflated. I'm a Giants fan. It pains me to say this. I expect the Commanders to win. They're 4.5-point favorites in this one. A lot of Brian Robinson running to close out the fourth quarter. And he's looked a lot better. He started off the year, and this is a guy that got shot too. So I think he's starting to get healthy, but I think he's starting to figure out the NFL a little bit more. If you look at his average, the first 10 games or the first 8 games that he played, he was right around that 3.6 mark. He had 5.8 in week 12, 4.6 in week 13. I think this is one of those running backs where he's getting more adjusted to his game plan on offense and the pro competition that he's facing in the NFL.
Pat, the Commanders want to run the football. So that being said, volume is indeed king, and he's going to get those opportunities, especially against the Giants defense that's banged up. Is there a case to be made here for Brian Robinson, or what is holding you back here in the rankings from him this week in particular?
There is a case to be made for him, and I've bumped him up a spot or two, and I might have to bump him up a little more. Bill makes a good case about the Giants defense being really susceptible to the run of late. And also, I totally agree with Bill that Robinson's looked a lot better. Like, I was kind of early in the season, I just I thought they were taking valuable touches away from Antonio Gibson because Brian Robinson just looked like a plotter to me. And he's been a lot more speed is not his calling card, but he's been more elusive lately. And, it seems like he's breaking more tackles. And he's averaged 20 carries a game over his last 4 games. I think that's the attraction here. But we do know he's going to split work with Gibson. We know he's not going to do much in the passing game. He's got 8 catches for 42 yards on the season, and he scored 3 touchdowns. And we're just as likely to see Antonio Gibson in the backfield if the Commanders have the ball inside the 10 or inside the 5 as we are to see Robinson. So I guess those are kind of my reservations. But yeah, I'm probably a little low on him. Realistically, I think he's like a higher end to mid-range RB3.
All right, let's get to that point in the show where we obviously talk about the guys that I am higher on than ECR. And at the running back position on the rankings throwdown, we have Isiah Pacheco. I've got him very high this week. ECR's got him at 14. I've got him at 10. I love him in this game. He looks ferocious running the football. There's touchdown equity because Mahomes in the dome throws the ball all over the place. And there's a good chance they're going to have a lead and have to sit on it. That means more Isiah Pacheco. So I love him this week. I'm all in. Pat, I know it's not a huge difference, but am I wrong to be so high on Isaiah P this week?
No, I'm with you, Joe. I've got him running back 12. Going against that Texans matchup, man. And there's no Clyde Edwards-Helaire yet. Presumably he's not going to be back. Texans have given up 1,834 rushing yards and 16 touchdown runs to running backs. Basically, they turn every back they're going against into LaDainian Tomlinson. So yeah, I'm high on Pacheco.
Let's go. It's Isiah Pacheco time. It's also time for our listener mailbag, everybody, which obviously these questions come straight from our Discord, fantasypros.com/chat. If you haven't already, go join. It's still free. You can hang out and talk off-season football, playoff football, get you all set up. But when you're a premium member, you get access to stages, AMAs, and a whole lot more. Let's talk about Why So Bad, Pog, and their question. I don't know what that name means, but everyone's got a lot of creative names on the stages and on the Discord, rather, excuse me. So they want to know, drop Rachaad White for J.K. Dobbins. I'm going to hit you with this one, Bill. So obviously J.K. Dobbins, I think safe to say, outperformed a lot of our expectations. for his first week back. I think a lot of us were like, let's just see how it goes. Well, 15 for 120 and a touchdown later, and RB9. We all wish we had just played him. So this week he gets Cleveland. It feels like Dobbins is the way to go. Is that the way you're going? Because my goodness, this Bucs offense is not exactly thrilling.
Do we know if it's PPR?
We do not know if it is or if it is not. So let's call it half PPR so nobody's happy.
All right. I think half point PPR. I don't know. I'd keep Rachaad White, I think. The Ravens' offense, to me, it's a mess. I know Dobbins had a good game last week. He came out and said, I'm still not healthy yet. We don't know who's going to be their quarterback. If Lamar or Huntley do come back, is that going to affect how much Dobbins gets, especially if Lamar comes back and we see his rushing ability? I'm a little bit wary of that Baltimore backfield. Gus Edwards was still involved last week. I never like to take away, if you take away that big run, I hate doing that. Right. So I won't do that with Dobbins. But we have seen enough of Rachaad White in that Bucs offense to know he's a big part of that game plan. And Brady trusts him, and he's in there on passing downs, and he's catching a lot of he's having a lot of receptions. He's doing a really good job in pass protection. So I'd keep Rachaad White here.
Pat, for you, is this also very system-based too? If it's PPR, you kind of still want Rachaad White, but if it's half or maybe standard, obviously, the touchdown equity at Dobbins might be greater in that offense?
Yeah, I love how Bill immediately asked about format because it's so big here because these guys
this one,
yeah, their profiles are so different. I mean, one guy who does almost nothing in the passing game, and then like even with White and Fournette splitting work last week, like there were 12 catches to go around between the two of them. I mean, Tom Brady just checks down to his running back so often that in PPR, I would definitely want to stick with White. Standard, I'd probably lean towards Dobbins, and kind of on the fence in half PPR. Maybe a slight lean toward Dobbins just because of the volume of carries he got in his first game back last week.
There you go. So that'll do it for the RB ranks for week 15. Go follow Bill Enright over on the Twitter machine at Bill Enright and check out all of his great work over on Sports Illustrated. Love the videos Bill does. I watch him all the time on the social media. I'm a big fan. I like the bald guys. We got to support each other. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Pat Fitzmaurice and Bill Enright, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.